Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Alison McConnell, delighted to be joined by Gordon Parks and Graeme McGarry. We will be looking back at Barry Ferguson getting off to a winning start at Rangers, the Hibs juggernaut continues, and St Johnstone are making a fight of it at the bottom end of the table. But first and foremost, Graeme, Barry Ferguson, that first 15 minutes at Rugby Park last night might have wondered what he'd signed up for.
Yeah, I think he knew what he signed up for, to be honest with you. I was at his press conference prior to the match. I thought he spoke pretty well, to be honest with you. I thought he said all the right things, all the kind of staunch things you might expect a Rangers manager to say, and somebody who knows the club. And he must have been a wee bit kind of rabbit in the headlights after that first 15 minutes. But I thought he reacted well in the game, made decisive substitutions, and I managed to turn it around.
That first half an hour, it did look as though Kilmarnock could open them up, but well, I think obviously you touched on it there, like Clinton Nsiala made way, but I think he could have taken off Robin Proper as well. There was a few, as he said himself, there was a few that he could have taken off, but quite a bold move just to change it half an hour or so on the clock.
I think Barry's part of the Scottish football's furniture. We've got relationships with him across the board, and we want him to do well. And I think, as you say, 20 minutes gone, you don't want Barry to be the guy that's going to damage his reputation. You don't want Barry's legacy to be more disaster at Rangers. So he galvanised things. You could see his energy. You could see the passion and that kind of animation and that kind of demand that he's placed on these players. He's clearly instructed them before the game. Things have to be better. But he spoke about character, and you could see it emanates from him and the coaching staff that he's brought in. It's all about personality, generating that kind of energy and transferring it on his players. And I think there was a click moment at Rugby Park. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than 2-0 down after 20 minutes. And then you see things galvanising. It speaks volumes for him as a person. And I think he goes to bed last night with a rose between his teeth. And I think a lot of people were pleased to see that because they want Barry to do well.
Do you think that's overplayed in some hands, the fact that you've got a bit of character, a bit of personality, or do you think that, is coaching more sophisticated than that?
I think it is, but I think what Rangers need at this moment in time is somebody to come in and show that and get a bit of that into the team. I wrote this the other day, I mean, they've got the second best squad in the country, more talented players than 90% of the teams they play. So if you've got them semi-organised and you've got them motivated properly, then their talent should take care of the rest most of the time. And I think what Barry did is just bring in that bit of steel to them, and I think they probably lose that game if it's still Philip Clement that's in charge, because I wouldn't have seen that from the dugout. I wouldn't have seen that kind of drive, that sort of passion. And I know it's very simplistic to talk in these terms, but just at this moment in time, I think it's exactly what Rangers need.
There's a truth about the psychology of the footballer, and when confidence is down, a lot of players play with one eye on the dugout, and that can work both ways. It can be nervousness, it can be, are they waiting to get the Ratha can under Clement at half time? Are they waiting to get picked up on? So they do play with one eye on the dugout, and if you get a manager there who's standing tall and driving you on, that can be enough. That can be enough to get you into a position where you can go. I mean, Rangers have got a good squad, right? Relatively good squad when you're comparing like for like at that Kilmarnock level. They're better man for man in a lot of departments. But to generate that and get it to actually get players delivering on that has to come from sometimes the manager. And you saw that last night clearly.
Obviously bold to take off Nsiala just in the half-hour mark, and I don't think he didn't even look at him as he was walking past, and he was very respectful when he was asked about it in the press conference. Said, we're going to work with him, we'll make him better. It's not personal, but I had to change it. But it's quite a bold move to hook a player like that when you're 2-0 down in less than half an hour on the clock. Yeah,
I mean, I think the word that, I actually got a text from a friend. I said this in a piece before the press conference the other day, and it said, anytime someone mentions standards or demands or expectations, you need to take a shot. And I was like, well, I can't do that because I'll be dead by the end of the day. So, but these things are getting mentioned for a reason, and I think that was an example of it. I think it was him saying, he's not hanging him out to dry. He's just basically saying there's a standard of performance here that's acceptable, and Clinton Nsiala on the night fell far short of it. And he's also sending a signal to the players that he's not scared to make difficult decisions, and if you're not pulling your weight or you're not performing to the level, you're going to be hooked.
But Graeme, anybody that knows Barry knows that it's a twofold situation. He's been a frustrated fan, and he's had to go as ambassador and watch this. A lot of it's been garbage, and he's seen the faults, and he's had no opportunity to go and change things. He's now got that opportunity to go in and actually make tangible change. There's no way anything will stand in the way of him driving himself to try and... He'll believe within himself that if he gets result after result, the job could be his. That might not be the case, but he'll believe that. Anybody that knows him knows Barry's ambition, his self-confidence. Making brutal decisions like that last night, a par for the course for Barry Ferguson, won't give him a moment's sleepless nights, or he won't even give it an iota of thought. He might have a word today with the young boy, but ruthless, brutally ruthless.
He's also vindicated.
And by the way, he deserves a round of applause for it, because it's long overdue.
And it did work.
It did.
He
Accountability is a massive thing for players.
The other thing that you touched on there is he believes that he can go in and maybe get that on a permanent basis, which is a really interesting question, because I think all players, like even if you sign a player that's maybe going in somewhere as a squad player, I always think that players back themselves to go, no, I'm good enough, I can definitely get in. And I think exactly the same. I think he'll fancy, if I go in here, I do a decent job, I've got to be in the reckoning when the conversation is had this summer about who's coming in on a permanent basis, that I need to put myself in. Is that plausible, do you think, Graeme? Obviously so much will depend on who the backers are, if there's investment coming in, what kind of say that they're going to have on a permanent appointment. But for example, were they to go unbeaten domestically unbeaten between now and the end of the season, you have to surely be part of the conversation then.
Yeah, it's that whole Barry Robson syndrome, isn't it, at Aberdeen, where he went in and had a great run and then they couldn't do anything but give him the job, and it might well be if Barry can do that between now and the end of the season, then that's a situation he might be in. I think if you look at it, if you look at his CV as a manager, and you leave out what he's done as a player, there's no way on earth he's getting anywhere near the Rangers job. If he'd get the Motherwell job, you'd have been surprised. A couple of weeks ago, you'd have been like, he's not qualified for that. But when you take into account what he's achieved at Rangers and what he knows about the club and how ingrained in it he is and the traditions of it, he knows what it takes to win at Rangers. And I know these are kind of simplistic ideas sometimes, but it's a unique job in a lot of ways. I think leading a team who's in League Two and is part-time and is trying to get up to the divisions is a completely different kettle of fish to being the Rangers manager, a different skill set altogether. And I think Barry has certain skills that fit that job very well.
He also brings I know that there's a kind of pressure valve released at Rangers when Barry got it. A lot of people thought this is a ridiculous appointment.
Yeah.
But
Rangers fans too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, Rangers fans, but they also bring one of their own back in, and that identity, and it speaks to a lot of fans. They're just grateful to have their back with one of their own. Barry's biggest problem is a dysfunctional football club. It's a poor squad. I'm talking about Rangers being a good side. They're not a good side when it comes to going and winning game after game after game. I don't think they're capable of doing it. But the dysfunction within that dressing room needs more than just an atmosphere lifter or somebody that can give basic direction. The problems are far, far bigger than that, let's be honest.
I think that's why, obviously, sorry Alison, I was going to say why they've obviously brought in Neil McCann as well, and Billy Dawes, guys with a bit of experience and maybe a bit of tactical nous that Barry can lean on as well. I think that's very important.
But you could bring in David Blaine, right?
Good manager, is he?
Right, Barry will initially get some kind of reaction because players, again, the psychology of the footballer means I look after myself here. Oh, I've got a contract here I need to earn. I've got a problem here. He will get an initial boost for that. And you saw it last night. The galvanised, there was character there. But is that squad good enough to go and win game after game after game? And the games that matter to the Celtic fans, the Celtic one. Sorry, the Rangers fans, the Celtic game. That's not a game they're going to win. So there's the problems ahead.
That's the thing, because when you come in immediately, there's a short-term reaction. I think he's maybe had one session with him before last night's game, and a really brief conversation to try and obviously implement your own standard and philosophy, and a very quick conversation about what that entails and what it means. That gives you a very short-term bounce. Long-term, do you think he's got the credentials to go and take it?
On paper, no, I don't think he does. But as I say, the proof's going to be in the pudding. If he can put a run together, he's got to be in the conversation. Personally, I don't think he will get it, no matter what happens. I don't think that the new owners, if they do come in, are going to take a guy just because he's a club legend. And even if he performs well over a period of 10, 11 games, especially when you look at a squad, something that's been levelled at them a lot is that they perform when it doesn't really matter. And that's kind of what the situation they're in just now. The only two games that matter is Fenerbahce and Celtic, really.
Well, that's a big test that's coming up, obviously, next week away to Istanbul, and then on a fortnight this weekend, they'll be at Celtic Park.
Fascinating, because there's still a potential success story there. I mean, who's to say they don't? I mean, Rangers, they're a team you can't predict. But in Europe, you kind of can. Because, again, you've got a squad of players that showcase themselves at the highest level. It interests them. They're playing it in Europe. It's a selling ground for them. It's a window for them. That's why you get a better performance in Europe from them. The Clermont found they couldn't then get them to go to Ross County and Motherwell to replicate that. That's a selfish dressing room. Barry will sort that out. I wrote Barry's column for years for the Record, and I got an insight into him. When he was at Clyde, I told him, go and buy big midfield players, sign big guys who'll just flick the ball on. At that level, that's enough. Get a goalkeeper to launch it as far as he can and play percentages and work on your set pieces. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to play method through the midfield, get tidy players, and have a system which is all about getting on the ball and keeping it. And I went, Barry, that's not going to work. And it cost him. He's learned. He's learning. I think this is a massive job, but he belongs at Ibrox almost, Barry, doesn't he? He knows. So that kind of insight into what's required, again, brings the fans back on board. Can that be enough of a wave to drive him to do something in Europe? He would need to, if he wants a job on a permanent basis, right?
He needs a big result.
You'd have to do something that the fans are then crying for him to get it. Can that be done? I don't think so, because his players will let him down, as they have done, manager after manager after manager. That's just the fact.
That's a cultural thing, that where you are with players in. Like, if you have a dressing room that's perennially letting the club down and letting the dressing room down, surely that's a cultural thing that you have to. Requires change behind the scenes too.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of one player that I'd put my hat on. If you get that job, that's going to deliver for me consistently. That's why the whole thing is emptied. Barry will know that himself. He's trying to make the best of a situation. It's a lottery win for him to get that job and go in when he gets up in the morning to drive into Ibrox as the manager. Yeah. But he's going to find out sooner rather than later these players will let him down, because that's what they do.
I think also they're just not good enough for Rangers. A lot of them parts. Yeah. It's not just even mentality. I think talent-wise, there's some guys there who, relatively speaking, for the Scottish League, they might be good players, but they're not the players we've seen at Ibrox in the past. And you say that's about budget, and Clermont would moan a lot about finances, but he's actually spent a lot of money on a lot of dross when you think about it.
The irony for last night again speaks to the dysfunction within the squad. That Cyril Dessers, a maligned individual, bails them out. There's their problem.
20 goals.
I know. That's a player in Cyril Dessers. I really do.
But see that goal. That goal's a phenomenal goal. See, like the bounce, and then you can argue maybe you shouldn't be allowed to take the shot at first. The goal at Old Trafford. Yeah. I think he's an instinctive striker.
Yes, we don't have to think about it. He does. He buries things, but again, history shows he's not consistent enough. He's got so many flaws. He's not part of the solution for a future progressive Rangers team.
You mentioned there about that first 15 minutes at Rugby Park, and you're thinking you don't want Barry Ferguson to go in and tarnish a legacy. Is there still a danger that can happen when you think of the magnitude of the games coming up? Jose Mourinho's side, you're going up against a master tactician who has phenomenal success, particularly in a European arena, then going up against Brendan Rodgers Celtic at Celtic Park. There'll be another game at Ibrox, but going into Celtic Park, no fans in attendance at that game, a Celtic side who are just meandering to a title without any kind of pressure on them. Are these the games that actually that can be fraught for him?
They can be, but I don't think even if he is beat 5-0 at Celtic Park, it's going to affect Barry Ferguson's Ibrox legacy. He's had ups and downs at Rangers in the past, left the club in a kind of, a way that he probably wouldn't want to in the past, and still the fans love him to bits because he's achieved incredible things and things that they've not seen for a long, long time since then, probably. So no, I think his legacy as a player and as a man at the club is secure.
Did you not think, after 15 minutes, could he have imagined standing at full time, beating his chest and his hands are out like Messiah's back, right? That's great for Barry. That's exactly what he needed, because there's a launch pad for him. Because even these Rangers fans that are cynical, don't really believe that he's the guy as a long-term investment as a manager, can be convinced slowly but surely. But it has to be spectacular. It has to be a dramatic transformation.
I think what was really notable last night was the fact there was a bit of fight about Rangers. I've covered Rangers a fair bit this season. I think what's been really glaring has been when they've gone down in games, when there have been moments in adversity, they've had nothing about them. They've just folded, and it would have been easy, as he said last night himself, it would have been easy for them to capitulate. I actually thought Kilmarnock could have scored a third when they were 2-0 up. They had a smashing chance to get a third. I think when they got a goal back, you always thought that Rangers might come back into it. But that fight and a bit of heart, I think, is what's been missing from Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at them on Saturday against St Mirren, I mean, it was pathetic.
They could have played all day on Saturday.
I actually couldn't believe when Barry named the same 11. But I know injuries and things, it was a wee bit hamstrung that. But I just thought, how are you going to turn these guys from that shower on Saturday to getting an actual performance at Rugby Park, of all places? And then obviously after 15 minutes, you're fearing the worst again. But as we said earlier, he's a guy who will demand a certain level of performance, and he's not going to stand there and watch them capitulate and just accept the fact that they're going to get beat. And that is just probably what Rangers need right now. Maybe not for a long term, but definitely right now.
See, when you watch his touchline theatrics, he's kicking water bottles and he's punched his incandescent rage and all that. Yeah, I mean, that has an impact, because if you know Barry, he can get his fangs out, he can bare his fangs. And at half time, I'm sure the fangs were out.
Well, actually, he said he said last night something that I thought was quite interesting. He said, I could have gone in and banged heads, but I didn't. I went in and said, I want what you just done in the last 10 minutes of that half. That's what I want in the second half, which I thought showed a bit of maturity and a bit of progression.
Really well after the game. I thought it was really articulate and really calm.
Kept a lid on it as well, didn't he?
His eyes looked as if he hadn't been through hell. That's a traumatic 90 minutes he's had. He looked completely in control. Very impressed with that.
I also think he would have banged heads if it wasn't for that last 10 minutes.
That goal changes the complexion.
I think he would have went in through some teacups.
This is his one and only opportunity to become permanent manager. He's not going to allow young players failing. He'll get them off. He's not going to allow certain standards to drop. You will see a change, because Barry's managerial lifeline depends on it.
It'll be interesting, I think. Obviously, Mother will go to Ibrox on Saturday, and obviously we'll bring them right down
on the back of a win.
On the back of a win, aye. But I think Mother will go there and they'll play a low block, and it'll be really intriguing to see, can he come up with something different with this group of players to get through that, because that's obviously Clement's biggest failing, his Achilles heel. He couldn't break teams down, and I think Mother will do that, and they've got a bit of pace in the counter, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle that.
See if you're a player in that dressing room and you switched off with Clement clearly, and you get a new voice, and you realise that the esteem that Barry Ferguson has within that club, you start to listen. And I think you saw that last night. Would Clement's squad have reversed that problem? I highly doubt it, because they were disengaged with the manager.
It's on Saturday.
The engagement the squad had with the coaching staff last night was clear to see. Animated, you could see the reaction. And that can flip things. I doubt it, but it could.
Is it fair to say there's a parallel between the situation he finds himself in and Neil Lennon's situation at Celtic? Maybe, going back a fair few seasons. Neil Lennon had maybe different credentials when he took that job, or certainly the second time when he took it after Brendan Rodgers had left to go down to Leicester. But maybe similar parallels of going in short term, and then before you know it, you're in Hampden Showers and somebody's coming to give you a job.
I was about to say, Rangers don't have a cup final to look forward to, unfortunately. But I mean, listen, sometimes it happens. But if you remember at the time, the fans were in uproar about that, about Lennon getting the job in that way. So it worked out, I think pretty well for a spell, and then it obviously went awry. So I mean, I guess so. But I think that the overriding point is that Barry does have a chance here. He's got an opportunity. As Parksy says, he's going to do everything he can to take it. I personally don't feel it's going to be enough. I don't think he's a long-term answer, but he's got a shot.
Think he'll relish the chance of going up against Mourinho?
He's a competitor, isn't he? This is beautiful. I mean, if you asked him a week ago that this scenario was possible, he wouldn't have. I mean, what an opportunity. Barry Ferguson surprises me continually. He surprises me how adaptable he is. I know that the ambassadorial role was a frustration for him, because you want to be in there making a positive impact rather than shaking hands. Barry surprises you always as a player. He levels he gets to. I mean, fantastic. As a guy, as a person, fantastic. Can he raise himself into become the profile that Rangers need? That kind of gravitas. Can he do that? Nothing would surprise me with Barry.
It's interesting. I mean, I think another parallel, maybe it's a different situation, but when Walter Smith went into Ibrox, he didn't have a great deal of managerial experience. He was an assistant, obviously, to some brilliant managers, some of the best that there's ever been. But he didn't have a great deal of experience, and I'm not comparing the two at all, but I'm just saying, it's sometimes the least expected kind of things can happen.
Do you not think he was very polished last night?
I thought he was, and I thought he was. The thing that impressed me most was how measured he was after the game.
Yeah, I thought he was really measured
Like he
and
came
really
out
calm.
and he was saying, he sat with Stephen Davis and Boydie and McFadden, and he was saying, "Oh lads, just keep a lid on it. I'm not getting carried away." He must have said that 4 or 5 times. I'm not getting.
What
carried
that does, again, it banishes the perception. Neil Lennon was similar. There's a perception about the individual which is wide of the mark.
Absolutely, I think that's true as
Fiery
well.
personalities on the pitch, but
Very articulate, very calm, and his eyes calm. But that's what you see somebody that's in control, and Barry looked like the guy that was driving.
Do you still think there will be a hunger from Rangers fans though to cast the net a bit wider? Stephen Gerrard's name continually has cropped up. Is that a sentimental wish, do you think?
yeah, I actually think there's a bit of revisionism about Stephen Gerrard's time at Ibrox.
do
I
I
think,
think so.
listen, 55 and all that, you can't take that away from him. And Rangers were really, really good that season. Celtic obviously fell off a cliff. But if you remember, just before lockdown, they lost to Hamilton Accies at home, a 1-0
Hearts.
game. And I was looking back at some of the reports of that quite recently, because when the Stephen Gerrard rumour came up, and everyone was saying the fans were in revolt. People were walking out. Very similar to the end times with Philippe Clement. And I think people are looking back at that with kind of blue-tinted glasses, if you like, and thinking it was better than what it actually
You remember the title win, but you don't actually remember.
You don't remember everything else, And I think
There's another problem that Barry's got that Stephen Gerrard doesn't have. Stephen Gerrard come to Rangers again would be able to attract the big name players. Barry doesn't really have that. Whoever the figurehead is at Rangers, at any big club now.
Although
needs
if
to
there's a
have that.
sporting director still to come in as well, the club are quite
Yeah.
keen to bring in a sporting director. If you have someone there who has a bit of kudos.
But kudos is a word. I'm not diminishing Barry Ferguson but in a managerial sense, you have to have that contact base. You have to have that kind of lure and pull that you
You
can
also
bring
have to have
players
the
in.
finances involved to be able to go and
Again,
see.
it's a hypothetical. Is the money going to be there? Who knows?
Well, that all comes down to this takeover, doesn't it? And what kind of investment might that be? But even that investment, will it be the situation that all of a sudden you're back and able to compete in terms of offering, the kind of salaries that are going to be necessary to deliver a title? I don't know if that's a realistic expectation either.
No, I don't think so. But, they have to do something to try and narrow the gap with Celtic financially. But what they've really got to do is sort the recruitment department out, because they're signing players just now who aren't that cheap. They're wasting a lot of money on guys like a Robin Proper, who's just not suited to Scottish football at all. You see him playing...
First goal.
Yeah, incredible. And that's not the first time this has happened. So he gets bullied. He's not physically up to it, in my opinion. I think you see him in Europe, you see there is a player in there. But who's looking at him and thinking, he's the answer for the Scottish League?
Can't understand it.
I don't understand
You
that
give a new
either.
contract to young boy Ross McCausland, who's never going to be a sustainable option because of his lack of physicality. And he's on £10 a week. I mean, how can you justify that kind of
Outlay,
spend?
that sort of continual.
You've got $4 million coming for Oscar Cortez, who's...
Another ridiculous
obviously,
decision.
Terrible. It's easy to say in hindsight. I know he's obviously picked up an injury and he did impress when he first came in. But yeah, they've made continually bad decisions and wasted a lot of money. So what they've got to do is, if they do have a bit of money and they do have a bit of finance, they need to make sure the right guys are spending it, and they've got guys there who actually know the profile of player that's required to come and win a league.
Also, too, you think for Dessers said he had 10 options during the January window. 20 goals a season. I know he has a kind of scathing reputation, or where people are maybe critical of him here that watch him every week. But 20 goals, do you think he's one that Rangers could cash in on this season?
No. Again, recruitment individuals don't turn up at Ibrox with blindfolds on. They see what we all see.
10 clubs in January.
Do you believe him? I was offered 10 opportunities to go in 10 different places today, right? It's just nonsense, right? Too many flaws. Again, you go back, whoever reboots at Rangers, whoever the manager is, will need to empty the place. That's a fact. Dessers is not. Dessers should probably not have been leading the line this season from the summer
That's an
onwards.
easy thing to say though, when you say, you've got to empty the place. It's actually harder to do in reality, because you need people to come in and buy players.
That's true.
They've got contracts.
Right,
that come in.
who are you selling? Who's coming in? Who's with money? Who's getting sold?
Well, that
That's a
depends
genuine
on
question.
Your
Who's
buyer.
actually going and
You
saying,
need someone
"He'll
to
do it
come,
for me"?
You need someone to come and say, I want.
Dessers will end up a Dutch second division team, seeing out his career, because that's the level. There's a numerous amount of players that could come and score a goal for Rangers, right? Because you get opportunities galore, and if you've got a finishing ability that Dessers clearly has, you're going to score goals. But it's not disguising the problems that he has. Brilliant last night. But he'll go 3 and the fans will boo him. And that's going to be the repetition. How many managers have discovered that? Whoever reboots it will have to make these brutal decisions. Who's signing Dessers? Really, who is?
They're going to have to take a hit on these players. You can't expect big transfer fees for the likes of Dessers, as you say, Parkside. He has got ability, no doubt about it. You see his goal at Old Trafford, you see the goal at Tannadice was absolutely brilliant. The goal last night. But, yeah, nobody's coming in and saying, I'll give you £4 million for him, which Rangers...
Is there any player in the current first team squad at Rangers that you're paying money for?
No, well, Cherny's our best player, and he's
also on loan.
So he's going away at the end of the season. He's our best. Rascan, Suter, maybe injury prone, but
they're not talking. You're talking buttons, right? You're not talking.
That's what I mean. They need to take a hit on these guys, you know.
Is there anybody then? Are we admitting then there's nobody?
Who's a sellable
I don't think there's
asset?
one.
It depends on who's buying, doesn't it? It's like beauty being in the eye of the beholder. It depends.
Very few players go. Historically, very few players, even good players, leave Rangers and go up the way. Majority go down the way, and salary levels that are paid more often than not. The majority, 99%, drop their money. That's a problem at that club. If you compare that to Celtic, the opposite is true. There's thrivers. But I think that's a problem with the recruitment, and it's been...
And your whole strategy also of not selling players, like when there have been opportunities to sell, like some Morelos and Kent, who's coming in and not selling.
And they're deluding themselves with Egamine, who's, again, if you turn up without a blindfold, you'll see there's elements of the pub player in him. He's a project that you need to work on. He does some great things, he's got great natural off-the-cuff ability, but not a top player. So they're talking millions for him.
I think they will make a return on him.
Still only 21, isn't he?
He's young and he's raw.
To be fair, Kilmarnock had said, like, I hadn't expected him to be at sort of first team level.
I know people that have watched him, and it almost immediately went, not for me. And I think that's a problem Rangers will find, not for me. He's got good ability at certain moments.
That makes it really difficult to change the team, but it makes it really hard for a new broom to come in and sweep clean.
Yeah, there's nobody going to become the blue chip signing. You can get that money and reinvest it. There's just not.
Because unless you can't, if you have a contract, you're not going anywhere. You know, you're not going to say, "Oh, I'll take a cut in wages to go elsewhere." You're going to sit and see your contract out.
Yet to see a player that will leave for less money if he can sit there and take his money. It's just the reality.
That's real life for anyone. Anyway, Hibs and Hearts this weekend will go into the Edinburgh Derby with the wind at their backs. I think the last time they met at Easter Road in October, they were 11th and 12th in the table, so quite a turnaround for both. Hibs now hunting down Aberdeen for that third place spot. Hearts have went into the top 6. You expecting a decent game at Easter Road on Sunday afternoon?
I always expect a decent game in the Edinburgh Derby, and it never is. So I'm not going to build it up. I'm actually covering the game, so I'm not going to say anything in case I jinx it. But aye, on paper, again, we look at the form table, it should be a cracker. Hibs, fair play to David Gray. I was at a game kind of September, October time at Easter Road, and the place was dead. It was flat. They were rotten. They absolutely stunk the place out, and they get beat 2-1 off Motherwell. And it was just, you're thinking end of days stuff here for David Gray, and the turnaround has been remarkable. So fair play to him for that, and it's amazing what a wee bit of momentum does for you, because that's 14 games now without a defeat. Back-to-back wins against Celtic and Dundee United away. That was a huge win for them last night, and especially since there was a wee bit of controversy. They almost went 2-1 down, get back and responded really well. So,
is there an argument there, do you think, for sticking with a manager, for giving them a bit of time?
The template for Barry Ferguson to look at is David Gray, club legend, gets an opportunity and makes a fist of it after a catastrophic start, let's be honest. Is there an argument to be made for it? David Gray's, again, talking better than he was at the start. He looks as if he's really grown into the role.
He looks a lot more comfortable,
He does.
as winning games would do for you.
Because there was a period there where every Saturday night appeared like his last as a manager, and he's ridden that storm, and that will serve him well. I think he's done brilliant, but I think they've always been a better team than what they were delivering, and you can see that now.
Who, for you, stands out? Who are the guys that you think are capable? Well, first of all, do you think they're capable of getting third? And who are the guys for you that think have been the game changers for them.
I think they're absolutely capable of it, and I think the big thing for them has been their wing backs. Absolutely brilliant. Nicky Cadden has been phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant. And when he came up, I was intrigued to see how he'd do, because we never really seen him at the top level in Scotland. Obviously went down south and did okay, but he's come back up here and he's been a sensation for them. And obviously, you've his twin brother on the other side, but now Lewis Miller's coming into the team. Now, Lewis Miller's a funny one, because he's a guy who, actually, if I'm being honest, I actually thought he was on the way out of Hibs. I didn't rate him all that highly, and he's got great physical attributes. Technically, I didn't think he was that good, but he's really surprised me recently, and I thought against Celtic he was really good.
And you've got guys like Campbell starting to play it, but fundamentally the improvement at Easter Road is based on a goalkeeper that actually doesn't. There's been too many keepers there that have just caused panic.
Cheap goals,
really basic things.
Even
Rocky
at the
Garcia.
I was just going to come to Rocky Garcia.
Can't believe he's still there, to be honest. But he's stepped up. He's still got his things to deal with his potential bomb scare moments. But he's scoring goals. And he's aggressive. There's an aggression that David Gray's brought to Hibs. And you're right, the Cadden brothers have brought real energy and dynamism. Campbell's come in and looked a player. John Yule gets on the ball and plays. Martin Boyle they're not so dependent on Martin Boyle the way they were.
It's interesting though, do you think we overplay certain factors, and then sometimes it can be as simple as a bit of confidence, just a wee bit of momentum and a bit of belief that suddenly it is game changing for players, that you're walking just a wee bit taller, that you're going into games not with a sense of apprehension but with a bit of confidence about you?
Yeah, I think people maybe downplay the size of Hibs and Hearts sometimes, and the pressure that can come to playing with them, and if you're on a bad run like that, it can get pretty toxic, especially I think probably Hearts more than Hibs. But when they were on that run, as I say, I didn't see a turnaround coming, because they just looked absolutely dead on their feet. They get a couple of results and suddenly these boys look 10 feet tall, and I think that does play a big part in it. You're going into games now and you're looking at Hibs, if you're doing your coupon, you're thinking, oh, I quite fancy them now, because they've got that kind of wind in their sails. And
see, there's not the standard of, if you take middle of the pack quality in Scottish Premiership, it's not great, right? It's not great. Aberdeen showed it at the start of the season. The Hibs are doing it in Aberdeen.
Yeah, you piece together a consistent run of form, it will move you up.
And Graeme's right, confidence is everything. If you have a unity, everybody goes in the Monday morning, they've won the Saturday, they probably get the Sunday off. It just generates a momentum that everybody wants to have that again. But that works both ways, and the slide can be as quick as a rise.
Neil Critchley too, they're into top six, is slowly turned it around too. Who do you fancy on Sunday?
It's going to be, I think it'll be a very physical game. I think because both clubs have managed to stabilise. Hibs do look as if they've got greater momentum. Big result for Hearts last night. They had to go into this game in a bit of a lift. I just think that home advantage, and as you say, these games are never particularly great. I think it will be another physical, swashbuckling kind of ball in the air for a lot of the game. And I think Hibs are more equipped to deal with that.
Yeah, I quite fancy Hibs to win it, I've got to be honest. But I watched Hearts at the weekend against St Johnstone. I think for Lewis Miller, this is going to be a big test, because that left-hand side for Hearts is brilliant, and it's been a revelation. Spittle, who technically is a really good footballer, but James Penrice, for me, has been one of the kind of breakout stars of the season. I always kind of thought there was a player in there, but I don't think anyone expected him to go into Hearts and have that kind of impact that he's had. And I think Critchley's found a wee formula up top as well. He's just dropped Shankland in behind. Elton Kabunga's come in, and Shoney can score a goal. And I think not relying so heavily on Shankland at the moment as well has worked for them. So
young boy's done well too. James
Wilson
went into school after the last derby, and the Janny was saying to him, "Did you watch the derby?" Well, actually, I scored in it.
To the Janny. So no, I think he's been great as well, and it's been really refreshing to see a young guy like that getting a chance. We've obviously everybody talks about Lennon.
Speaks like a 45-year-old man.
It has to become the norm though. We have to get guys at 17, 16.
One of the reasons that you make the point that people don't understand just how big these games are is because if you're a Celtic Rangers fan, St Mirren fan, Motherwell fan, you're never going to be at an Edinburgh derby. But we've been fortunate enough to be at loads. They're massive occasions. The whole city's engaged in it. Again, if you're for Glasgow in the West, you've got no real perception of just how big it is, and that pressure that it brings. You have to win that game.
I actually I said this last year. Now, since the away fan lockout, and even with the reduced allocations at the Old Firm game, I actually think it's the best derby in Scotland now.
Yeah.
As an occasion,
I think it's
absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
You've got a
there's a
full
great
stand,
theatre
away fans,
to it.
you know.
There's definitely, it still retains.
And they've got the
it
best
feels
songs,
like
haven't they?
Oh,
feels like a proper derby. I think the Edinburgh derby, whereas the Glasgow derby, Celtic Rangers game, it's an odd feeling. I think when you've got no away fans, I think it's much more boring.
It's
for
definitely
it.
diminished it, 100%.
Definitely takes something out of it. Do you see Hibs is capable of going and getting third?
I think they have now got themselves in a position where they've got the weapons to go and do it, and there's a kind of stability. There's a bridge being crossed by Hibs that Hearts have yet to cross, I think, in regards of that delivering for the manager week in, week out, and the momentum that they have. If they can sustain that, I think yes.
Interesting. Aberdeen are obviously still in third position. I think Hibs are a point behind now after last night's game. But I saw a betting company this morning putting out odds on Jimmy Thelin being sacked before the end of the season. Is that how preposterous a position we're in?
you could put that up at 1,000 to 1 because it's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen. The board are absolutely square behind them. Know a couple of guys up there, obviously, and unless he comes out with some ridiculous kind of sequence of results where they get beat 5 and 6-0 every week, he's never getting sacked in a million years.
Do you see him recapturing any of the form that they enjoyed at the start of the season?
No, I don't. I think, again, having met him now and gotten to know the way his team plays, and he's recruited too many of his fellow countrymen and Scandinavians that don't understand, and I think a lot of them are bang average. And I think they've hit a brick wall and they're getting results now. They never played well at the weekend and get a result. They're getting.
To be fair, I think there were points in that run at the start of the season where they weren't maybe playing particularly well, but you get a bit of luck.
Yeah, and the fans were buying into it, and it went through the roof, and it was great for a period, but everyone knew it was coming to an end. I think he's in borrowed time, because I don't think he understands Scottish football. I think he has. If he didn't have that run at the start, the bookies are probably right, regardless of what Aberdeen. And I know that the people behind the scenes are desperate for him to do well, because he's now got this kind of reputation. But I have to say, not a long-term option.
I think they're in.
They've bought
for the long
into
term.
it.
You know, they've spent a lot of money to back him. It might not be instant results. I agree with Parts in a lot of ways, in terms of it'll take time for these boys to come in and understand what it's all about. Some of them, when I saw them playing at Ibrox, and the new guys were in, Tolbers and guys like that, and Eccles, and you looked at them and you thought, oh, what have they done here? They've spent a lot of money on a lot of guys who really didn't look up to the level at all. I think gradually they're starting to kind of turn the corner a wee bit. I don't think they're consistent enough. I think they will be overtaken for third place this season, but I just don't think there's any prospect in them sacking Thelin. I think it will definitely give them the summer, try and get these guys bedded into the team, and have another go at it next year.
It's incredible though when you go back a couple of months and you look at the table and you look at the gap that they had between themselves and Hibs and Hearts, and what they've squandered.
Yeah.
Is that a sacking offence for you?
The problem at Aberdeen is, and Graeme's spot on, the climate at the moment is about giving time, and they can't keep changing managers the way they have. Mm-hmm. So they've got the project there, and the project's a popular guy, and he's got this magnificent run behind him, but they've fallen off a cliff for a reason. And the reason is the squad that he's assembled isn't good enough. And I think he's out his depth in the Scottish game, because he doesn't understand that. He might be learning quickly, but I think he's very naive. I think he's too nice to his players. After games, even I was at Kilmarnock, they were appalling, and he came in and didn't appear to be understanding just how bad they were.
Is that not just a bluff, almost you come in and you want to have a public perception of what's going on, or present a public face of things, whereas it might be a very different story privately? Maybe.
That's not the feeling I get with him. And I'm not saying you've got to go and read riot acts, but you're asking me, is that a sacking offence to go and have the biggest... I mean, I can't think of a more spectacular collapse. Can you think of anything so dramatic?
I do wonder though if the picture is skewed because of the extremes. So you had this fantastic run at the start of the season, and then you had this abject run where they couldn't buy a win, and then they've obviously got a couple of wins in the last few weeks. You think if you had to muddle it up and say, well, here's an Aberdeen side that are in third position with the same amount of points after the same amount of games, but it had been more up and down rather than these two extremes. I don't know if the
My belief is,
perception's different.
Alison,
what they've done.
my belief is Jim Goodman's recruitment at Aberdeen was better, and it's been proven they brought a lot of money in. Jim's legacy there was multi-million-pound transfers, and I just don't see that quality there at the moment. And I think everybody, I mean, like David Gray could fall off a cliff shortly, right? That's football. That's what I'm saying about the standards within that middle pack. It's ripe for somebody to go and do really well because confidence can get you there. But can it sustain it over a period? History says that they can't. Aberdeen can't keep turning managers over either. But my gut feeling, he's not the man.
I think it's too early to say, to be honest. I mean, I think at the start of the season they did say it might take a bit of time for Jimmy Thelin to come in and change things, and I think nobody expected the run they were on. And it was a bit of a freak, you know what I mean? We were talking about that. They were winning games maybe, but, you know, the ball was falling their way in the last minute. And even
that game at Danes Park.
I always felt as if the run was a wee bit false. It was a bit of a false narrative. I think 5 of the first 7 games were against lower league teams, so you can't then say, oh, we went 12 games, you know, and it's not quite the true picture. However, what I would say is, I've seen them very good this year. I've seen them been appalling, as Parksy says. So I think he just needs a bit more time. I think it's too early to say that he's a dud.
Okay, looking at the other end of the table.
Don't put word dud out of my mouth.
Tony Docherty's Dundee, are they in a bit of trouble for you?
I think this weekend they become crunch. Again, Tony Docherty we want to see do well. Really nice guy, really driven, goes about the things the right way. And I thought, perfect fit. Go and make his name, go and make his mark. It seemed
Really
to
good
be
season last year too.
Brilliant season last season. Had his players playing for him. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know. I'm not close enough to it. But there clearly is a problem. They have to put the brakes on this decline, because if they don't, they could go down.
You look at St Johnstone and you're thinking it was a formality
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, and you're thinking, you know, St Johnstone are down, who's going down with them? All of a sudden now you look to this weekend's game and you think, my word, it's huge.
I'm worried for Dundee. I spoke to a couple of people up there, and I think the 6-0 Hearts game could be one of those results that just destroyed their confidence. By all accounts, they had a brilliant week that week, and they really went into that game feeling really good about themselves. To then be turned over 6, and then they had Celtic Park on Wednesday night. It was another 6. 12 goals in 2 games. Difficult sometimes to recover for that kind of run. I was at the game last night. I watched them against a Motherwell team who are trying something completely different. The Motherwell team was shot by the 50th minute. They were out on their feet. And Dundee actually played a lot of nice stuff. They eventually got the equaliser that they deserved. And you're thinking, if there's one team going to win this, it's Dundee. But they went right back into their shells again and handed the impetus to Motherwell. Motherwell score, and it's another defeat. And I just didn't see the fight within them. That defensively, so poor. And I really do worry for him. I don't think it helps that he's chopping and changing the goalie every couple of weeks. I think that's a sign of a manager just kind of searching for answers that he doesn't really know what they are.
Do you think they've got enough to get out of it? Does it become a case of what we're talking about there? You talk about confidence and what it does for a team.
Well, if I'm in St Johnstone's dressing room, I've now got something to go and pull down.
Well,
and
that looked as though it was gone.
It did. Listen, even you're right. It was like a fait accompli. Everybody just presumed this is that. That's done and dusted. But see, when you've actually been given a wee bit of hope from a dark place, that hope can become something that you're determined to take. And that's Dundee's problem is St Johnstone can go and pick up points. They're picking up no points and they're getting turned over. And they're psychologically getting hammered. I mean, that's batterings that they're taking. Do I worry for them? If I'm massively. I think if they don't win this weekend, the whole thing's turned, and they'd be my favourites to go down.
Psychologically too, when you've been pulled back, you know, the momentum seems to be with St Johnstone going into this game, whereas you've got a team, it's almost harder to be being chased than to be being doing the chasing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Simo Valakari, who's went in there, and if you remember when he first came in, people thought, what is he doing? He's playing so open and they're in a relegation scrap. I think he's adapted very quickly and he's shown that he's got more than one string to his bow. I've watched them scrap a couple of results. And you didn't really think St Johnstone had that in their makeup. Both Motherwell games, aye. I mean, the 2 games were appalling, but they would come out the right side of them. And I think he's put a wee bit of steel in there as well as, you know, the kind of nice football that he's trying to play.
He's an interesting character. I think he comes
got the place
across.
going, isn't he? He's really
but I think he comes across as really positive.
He's got a look about him. He's got an effeminate quality, right? He has. And he's obviously a thinker. And he's popular. And you can see he's effervescent and he's got a bit of character to him. And I'm delighted to see that they've managed to get some kind of, make a fist of this fight. Because there's a quaintness to him. He's an unknown quantity. I know that his name's familiar to Scottish football, but he presents himself completely differently from every other manager in the Premiership. If you take my point, there's a kind of charismatic, elf-like quality to him. Do you know what I mean? He's definitely got something between he's a thinker. And if he can be the guy that triggers this fight back, he's done a remarkable job, because it's not about resources. St Johnstone will probably get the least. Remarkable.
And when you were in there, you saw that, I mean, the situation in terms of their recruitment in the summer, the goalkeeper situation was an absolute shambles. At the back, they were dreadful, and he somehow managed to kind of solidify them a wee bit, which is the thing that everyone was criticising for at the start. So, no, I agree with Parksy. I mean, I'm going to say probably the effeminate thing.
No, listen,
just because I think I wouldn't mess with him.
No, I wouldn't either. But he presents himself certainly in the lighter side, right? He's not got that kind of bullish, aggressive approach.
He's quite.
He's light. He's light, and he's a wee. You're intrigued by him.
Yeah.
Did you get one point? It's more that than anything else.
I think he's got a really his energy is very positive. I think even when they were losing games and he's coming out, and I think some of the things he was saying, you're maybe raising an eyebrow at and thinking, I don't know if he's going to, how this is maybe going to be interpreted in our dressing room, but you'd have to say he's got them buying into it. If you're to look at results across the last few weeks, they look as though they're buying into what he's trying to say.
Take you back to a game, they get beat 3-0 at Ibrox, and it was 3 goals in the space of 10 minutes, if you remember. And it was like shambolic defending. Jack Sanders headed one right to Diamande to score. It was horrendous stuff. And you're thinking, this is it, rock bottom, they're gone. And he came in after that game. They actually did a wee bit better second half. He made a couple of changes and they were a wee bit better. And he came in after the game and he was using words that managers in these situations just do not use. And it was him that was offering it up. He was saying, this is a catastrophe. We are in a dire situation. It's a tragedy. All these kind of things. We were sitting there going, oh, brilliant. But he's like, I can smell it. That's what he said, I can smell it. It's turning. I can smell it. And we were all kind of like, this is gold. But actually he believed it. You know, you could see there was kind of...
More importantly, his players are believing it.
Yeah. And again, I'm talking about his demeanour again. He's clearly got a lot going for him, because he's slight in physical stature and he presents very timidly, and but there's a big drive there. To get the job initially, he must have, caught the eye. But as you say, he speaks differently. His ideas are a wee bit different. I think he's a breath of fresh air. And the players are obviously feeling that as well, because the evidence is they've got a bit of gusto now. And
again, it's a club that believes in a manager. I knew from speaking to guys up there that no matter what happened this season, they were going to stick with him, because they really believed in what he was kind of selling them.
Yeah.
And I think they're kind of reaping the benefits.
Really impressive when he starts talking about... I mean, and you're right, he wrote himself off almost. Yeah. And there was a psychology there just to kind of cut a hopelessness we can build from there, because who expects anything else?
Kilmarnock in the mix as well?
I think they are. I think they are. Again, you don't expect them to be down there. I think they've probably got enough just to kind of keep themselves out of it. But yeah, I think they're right in the mix. They're only, 4 points ahead of Dundee? Is that right?
Yeah.
So you can't write them out of the equation just yet. But I do think they've got enough quality in their squad, and I think Derek's got enough in the house that they won't be dragged in it. I think it's a 2-horse race now.
Although I felt as though last night, once they lost that goal, I thought you could feel their energy punctured entirely, like feel the confidence drain from them last night. Once Rangers sort of scented blood about coming back into it. Yeah. I do wonder about Kilmarnock maybe being dragged into it.
I think last night was a damaging result, because, as you say, they could have gone 3-0 up. They were cruising. Had they have won that game last night, we'd be talking about them completely differently, because the league is so tight, and you can vault yourself up quickly, but you can vault yourself down the way as well, and they're in that category. They've probably got enough, because they've got more quality, certainly in the middle of the park, players that can play. They've got strikers that will score goals and bail you out. That'll probably be enough to keep them safe.
Barry saying thanks for the,
It's okay, I'll get to you in a
for
minute.
the terms of endearment at the start of the programme.
Ferguson out now.
Anyway, Neymar responded to taunts from opposition fans by silencing them in the most perfect of manner when he scored directly from a corner in Santos 3-0 win. Tell me, your top 5 karma moments for players that have maybe silenced fans by having the last word. I'll raise an interesting talker, Mo Johnson at Ibrox when he scored for Rangers, when the Celtic fans were making their feelings clear about his betrayal or switch from one half of the city to the other. Any others that come to mind?
A great story I heard when I was younger. I can't remember this, but apparently when Davy Cooper was playing for Motherwell, and he was taking pelters during the warm-up. I think it was maybe Dundee United fans that were giving him real pelters before the game, and he was warming up and he hit a shot towards the goal and he hit the bar. And they were going, "Oh, Cooper, you're hopeless, you've lost it," and all this kind of stuff. And he got the ball back and he put it down and he hit the bar again. And then filmed in the Vicky slip. Just did that.
That's cool.
I meant it. Kind of thing. So I don't know if that's an urban myth or whatever, but that's one of my favourites, you know.
Mo Johnson's story for me is iconic, kind of, and it was the start of something great for him at Rangers. Do you remember Gary Caldwell scored against France at Hampden?
Yes.
Similar, kind of, completely not similar, but Scotland fans weren't Gary Caldwell fans. Mm-hmm. They thought he wasn't good enough to be in the team and all that. That was a moment in time where he put the fingers up to the Scotland fans. It's a difficult question. Gascoigne.
The dentist chair.
The dentist chair after being pilloried by the media. And I'm sure there was England fans at the time that thought his lack of professionalism and whatever else. Difficult question, have you got any?
Eric Cantona, the penalty and then swinging in the pole against Liverpool after he'd come back from suspension, closer to home. Tam McManus swinging in a pole at Tannadice, I think, after the
Aye, that's right.
pole dancing expose.
Andy McLaren as well, he was taking some pelters at Fir Park one game about his kind of personal issues and all that kind of thing, really beyond the pale stuff.
Yeah.
And he wrapped one in and then just came up and square goaled the entire East Stand, you know, and it was just, you couldn't grudge him it, you know, you're like, fair play, mate. You know,
Robbie Fowler going along the byline was one.
Yeah.
I always think as well there's a bit of peril clutching goes on with supporters, you know, if you're maybe giving it tight to players during games and giving out the kind of abuse that you would just never think of offering on the street, and then if someone gives anything back, there's a kind of you know, there's a kind of, how dare you?
There's a famous David Beckham one with that, wasn't it? It was Leeds United fans singing about Posh Spice, and he scores a free kick against them, and then makes them aware of his thoughts.
I remember I went a run of games, as I often went, without scoring a goal.
Oh.
Right? And I went Broadwood. And John Brownlee was assistant manager to Alex Smith at the time. So after we finished training in the morning, he said, "Go for your lunch, but come back at 1:30 with a bag of balls. We're going over to the AstroTurf. Just the two of us." I went, "John, just the two? Why?" He went, "You'll find out." So I had my lunch, took the balls over to the AstroTurf pitch at Broadwood. John told me to line the balls out along the byline, and I had to stand in the penalty spot, and he would roll the ball really slowly into the penalty area, and I had to go and kick it into the net. So I thought Jeremy Beadle was about, right? I thought, I says, "John, you're kidding me on." So he does it about a dozen times, and he says, "Parsley, can you hear it?" I went, "Hear what, John?" He went, "Can you not hear it? Do it again." He went, "Can you hear that noise of the ball hitting the back of the net?" I went, "John, you brought me out for... you kidding me on?" He went, "It's beautiful, isn't it? Just listen to it. So put the balls back in the bag, went home, played on the Saturday. I scored after 13 minutes and I ran up to the dog and went, "John, can you hear it now?"
Is that your favourite one?
Brilliant, love that. "I can hear it, Patsy, I can hear it."
The sound of your confidence rushing back. What about you? Can you think any others?
Oh, I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't really think. But I mean, there's dozens of examples of players who obviously come back to, you know, haunt their former clubs and all that kind of thing. And I guess that's in a similar line, so they'll take some abuse. But like,
There's been anyone more poignant than Dennis Law?
Well, he's back heel, aye.
And he walks up the tunnel straight after it. I mean,
putting his arm up. That's a kind of different scenario, I
It is,
suppose, in terms
it is.
of it. It's the flip side to get it right up you.
Oh, it is karma against your own fans.
Well,
I
let
think
us
we've
know
done well.
what are your thoughts. Let us know. Let us hear what your top 5 moments are and moments that stick in your mind. But that's all we've got time for this afternoon. Thank you to my guests, Graeme McGarry. Thanks to Gordon Parks. Don't forget to download our app where we get all the breaking news at your fingertips. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching.